In my previous video, I looked at a new paper from Philip Barden's lab on the evolution of myrmecophagy. Now, myrmecophagy is the consumption of ants and termites. And animals that have this kind of a diet have a lot of unusual designs, novel designs. Here's the anteater. Here's another look at the anteater. You can see that long tongue, that long sticky tongue sticking out and catching ants. Here's another species, the numbot, showing that tongue. There's a long snout, there's a lengthened tongue, there's reduced or missing teeth, the digestion system is different, and so forth. That paper showed that myrmecophagy must have evolved a dozen different times independently. So you had these random mutations constructing this novel design a dozen times over in the mammals we're talking about. So the original expectation of evolutionists was common descent. That was falsified big time. We saw that in the paper and in the press release surrounding the paper, there were teleological narratives. A lot of the explanation for what was going on was teleological. The evolutionists were using teleological narratives. For example, Barden said, while some species evolved defenses to avoid these insects, others took the opposite approach. If you can't beat them, eat them. That is a final cause, to avoid these insects. That's teleological. Cannot happen under evolution, and yet you see that over and over in the literature. Another example, Barden was saying that this was a bold strategy that these mammalian species took to develop myrmecophagy. So that it was a bold strategy that they undertook. Obviously, a teleological statement there as well. Now, this was not a one-off. I didn't have to search around for a paper like this. This was last week's example of teleology. It is rampant in the evolution literature. And you might be wondering, what do evolutionists say about this? Well, they say teleological narratives like this are merely a convenience, a shorthand. Don't read too much into it. We're just speaking off the cuff for convenience. It has nothing to do with the actual theory. So I wanted to give you 3 reasons to see why that is false. A false rationalization. So first, remember, teleology is the arch enemy of evolution. So to say that we are casually and often, always and often, making teleological references just doesn't make any sense. It would be like a flat earther using round earth terminology all the time, or a politician using the terminology of his opponent. Think of a Republican speaking like a Democrat, or a Democrat speaking like a Republican. It just makes no sense. Teleology is the arch enemy of all things. Why would you use teleological language? It is the arch enemy of evolution. At its foundation, evolution is a rejection of teleology. And here they're using teleological language all the time. And that's just off the cuff. That's just a convenience for us. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't hold water. Number 2, there is a concept in evolutionary theory called mutational load. So mutational load is the idea that a population might be far from the optimum design or a good design. Well, if there's a lot of mutations happening, that can happen. If you have a very high rate of mutation, the average individual in a population will be a long ways away from its a good design, an optimal design. So the average individual in a population has a lower fitness than you might expect. Now, when the mutational rate is too high or the mutational load is too great, it will be lethal for a population. Evolutionary theory holds that you can't just have a real high rate of mutation. There has to be kind of a happy medium. Of course, evolution needs mutations. That's foundational. Mutations must happen, random mutation. They must be random with respect to need, according to the theory, but they can't be too high. But if we are to accept the evolutionist rationalization that his teleological narratives are merely a gloss, merely a convenience, pay no attention to what we are actually saying, we don't mean any of this, it's just a convenience for us, the theory is not teleological at all. If we are to accept that, then it would create an enormous mutational load, a lethal mutational load on the population, and I'll explain why. So, according to what they're saying, you have myrmecophagy arising a lot, right? It's all these 12 different times in these 12 different lineages, myrmecophagy had to have evolved, and it didn't evolve for a reason. Remember, we're throwing out the teleology. Myrmecophagy arose by chance. It just happened to arise, or some rudimentary form of it originally. You had to have some form of it so that it would be selectable. So some crude initial form of myrmecophagy arose such that animals could benefit from it. That required a lot of mutations. We talked about that last time, how that's a very low probability. Even Barden admits as much in the press release. So that's a problem right there. But let's set that aside. The point here is you have this myrmecophagy arising for no reason. Only until you finally get some rudimentary capability going will it be selected. Well, if that arose for no reason, there would have also been a lot of other designs arising. There was no preference for myrmecophagy. So if it arose a dozen times, there must have been all kinds of other things arising all the time. I mean, think of it. There are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of potential candidate biological designs that can happen in mammals that have no benefit at all. But there's no teleology. There's no reason for any of them not to happen or to happen. So if myrmecophagy is happening spontaneously for no reason, you cannot rule out that all kinds of things are happening. So in other words, the mutational load is enormous. That is the unavoidable implication of the evolutionists rejecting their teleology, their teleological narratives. No, don't believe this. We don't really mean this. Well, if you don't mean it, then you are introducing a lethal mutational load. Okay, finally, teleology is not merely in the evolutionist narratives. Yes, it is rampant in the evolutionary narratives, but that is not the only place that teleology crops up in evolutionary thought. It also shows up in their fitness functions. So this is a different category, and we saw this in the Eugene Koonin paper on protein evolution, which I have several videos on. They showed that protein evolution is really not that big of a deal. It had been a huge deal. Protein evolution has been an enormous problem for evolutionary theory, and all of a sudden this paper comes out showing, oh, well, guess what? It's actually not that big of a deal. And even in a pre-Luca, pre-last universal common ancestor environment, way back in a short time period in early evolutionary history, all kinds of native-like proteins could have evolved rather easily. Not a big deal. Well, the entire project relied on a teleological fitness function. The fitness function they used was forward-looking. It was entirely unrealistic from a strict evolutionary perspective. They cheated. They introduced a forward-looking fitness function into their simulation. So no wonder they were able to show the evolution of native-like proteins. So teleology is critical to evolutionary theory. It's not merely in the narratives. It requires these teleological assumptions to make it work. So there you have three major reasons why this claim that, well, teleology really has nothing to do with it and we're just using this language as a gloss, as a convenience. No, that is a false rationalization. Religion drives science, and it matters.